Well, good morning, everyone. At least it's morning for me. Um, about 9:30-ish. Oh, almost 10 o'clock. It looks like. And again, I just have spent some time in reflection regarding some sessions that I did yesterday and over the last while, really, and it inspired me to want to touch upon what I suppose we all deal with in our lives as human beings and engaging with one another, but also very important, of course, in families and what I work with on a regular basis. Oftentimes, when I'm doing an assessment with a family and seeing what their goals are, one of the probably top five goals, if not top two, would be healthy communication. And so today I wanted to speak a little bit on that, or shall I say a lot of it. You guys know me by now, huh? And when we start to unpackage this discussion around communication, of course, it has to be tied to uh, the or at least I tie it to the work that I've been doing for many years around integrity. And so when I think about this today, in terms of being able to have healthy communication with our family members and our teens, really there's probably two major parts. There's there's what we bring to the playing field. There's if I were to refer to language I've used in the other videos, there's the position that we take, or the parable kind of quote that I was using before was that it's not so important what we see, but from where we see it. We can't put the cart before the horse. When we talk about adulthood and what it means to be mature, we'll often say that adults live by conviction. And so, really what that means is that for mature adults, our primary relationship is a relationship with something that we might call our own personal code of honor, or we could even say a transpersonal code of honor. We live for something bigger than ourselves. We're attached to something bigger than ourselves. We live for things bigger than ourselves, things like integrity. And so a big focus of our work is where we're coming from, making sure that we communicate with integrity. So when I have these discussions in the parent leadership group about integrity, well, it is a leadership group and the focus of the group is integrity. So we have to frame it that way. You want to have healthy communication, you're going to have healthy communication by being a person of integrity. And once you have integrity within yourself, then what comes out of your mouth is also can't be anything other than healthy. That's what happens when we have integrity. Things get better. And so it's really important for people and for parents to, let me use this word that's overused these days, I think, but I'm going to use it, to be mindful, to know where your mind is, and to be able to make whatever adjustments you need to make so when you speak in a way that's a true reflection of who you really are. That's what integrity is. So we have to start with that. If you want to be a leader, if you want to be a man or a woman of integrity, then we have to know what integrity is. And I've spoken to this in other videos, so I won't get into it too long. But integrity, the word integrity itself is a relational word. It means to be one with, whole, undivided. So, in the hundreds of sessions and conference presentations I've given, all these people I've spoken with, there isn't anybody that doesn't want to be a person of integrity. So we really need to know what that is. So if you could take this away with you today, integrity is a relational word. It means to be one with, whole, undivided. But the question then becomes, well, what am I going to be one with? What am I going to be whole with or undivided from? Well, in the empowerment model and the integrity approach that I've developed and used and share with other people, uh, there's another presupposition, and that presupposition is that everybody inside themselves has a code of honor, what I call a code of honor, a set of virtues. Some people call them beliefs or values. I like to call them convictions. And the difference between a belief and a conviction is that a belief is something that we hold in our heads oftentimes, or a value. Somebody says, I value, respect. Okay, well, you can see their eyes go up, and that kind of means it's in their head. You get to tell whether somebody's belief or value is really something that they live through conviction. So conviction means with adherence. It means a fusion has occurred between what one believes, what one thinks, and what one actually does, what one actually embodies. So that's why we say, adults live by conviction. Conviction to what? Well, in the group, I do some exercises, and in my sessions, that's one of the first exercises I do with people. I invite people into the experience of identifying their personal code of honor. And the personal code of honor is again, just getting clear on what those virtues are that a person is dedicated to. Things like respect, passion, leadership, integrity, faith, truth, things like that. And so there's a list of maybe 30 or 40 of those kinds of words that people get to pick to identify a code of honor. And then from a code of honor, people develop what's called a sacred vow. So, it would, if you have within you a set of these wonderful virtues that you adhere to, that that are inspiring to you, what good would they be if they just stayed inside you? They would be no good. There wouldn't be any purpose in that. So you have to have naturally a desire to live those out in the world. Now, those virtues in and of themselves don't suggest any course of action or anything that you need to do. They're statements of being, not doing. They're statements of being, not doing. And so similarly, a sacred vow is a statement not of what you plan to do, but of who you truly are. So, for instance, a sacred vow might be something like, through inspiration and leadership, I strive towards being a source of recognition, love, and tenderness for my family, my community. So it says that there's a desire to live those out in the world, but it doesn't. The statement is not about what one is going to do. A statement, or it's a promise, it's a vow of what the person is going to be. So when you begin to unpackage this idea of being a person of integrity, and you say, what am I going to be one with? What am I going to be undivided from? Well, you're one with and undivided from a deep understanding of who you truly are and the promise that you have to make good on that for your own sake. So some people call this our calling. It's a calling, it's a vocation. Some will refer to it as a destiny, something that calls us forward. We're moving towards something. I will often say, for instance, in a parent group, and if you've been to different presentations and workshops and things like that, oftentimes the presenter will say to people or ask people a question. What brought you here? Will be the question. And people will talk about, how they wanted to learn this or that and things like that nature. Now, my response to that question, my declaration to that question for parents is that actually what brought you in the room was not what you think. You might think that you came here to get something. Actually, you came here to give something. You didn't come here for me to give you anything. You came here actually to give me something. You came here to give something to me that's probably getting in the way of you living out your sacred vow. What brought you into this room tonight is that you're making good on your vow. You have a promise to keep. Now, when I introduce this language to my parent leadership group and other people that I talk to in other presentations, it touches people deeply. They get it. Each and every person who comes into those groups has a promise, a loving promise that they're keeping to themselves and to the people in their lives. In my parent leadership group, I'm always reminding people that, remember, this is a love story. This is always about love. That's what's brought you into this room. No matter what the difficulties are, no matter what the challenges, no matter what the distress, you are here because you love, and you have a loving promise to fulfill. And when I declare that truth to people, they get it. It's not your distress that's brought you in the room. It's the power of your love and your promise to do exactly that. So this is that front end work on that piece of integrity that we really need to understand. So when you can ground yourself there, parents and people, when you can ground yourself there and reconnect there first, and then begin to move forward into engagement, what we might call communication, or what might include communication, then now you're coming into that space and coming to that conversation from the absolute solidity, if you will, from that union between who you truly are and who you are in that moment. And that just overflows with benefits. Because oftentimes the communications we'll be moving into will be difficult conversations and will be tense or what have you. But if we can connect to that first, the truth of who we really are, find confidence there, find peace there, find purpose and hope in those things there, then the chances are this communication will go well. So one of the things that I wanted to focus on around sacred vows and a code of honor is that after having done this many, many years and watching people construct their codes of honors and their sacred vows, is that probably one of the two most popular, if you will, consistent virtues that people aspire to, of course, is love and respect. Love and respect. So I want to just bring us back real quickly to the definition of respect, which is also an act of integrity, to know what we're talking about. Respect means to look again. Remember, RE on the front means again, spect means to look. So it means to look again. It means being thoughtful and considerate. And to love. So that being said, think about it now. When you truly love something, or someone, what kind of, what do you bring to that? I mean, do we not naturally, when we're in love, truly in love with something or someone, do we not naturally treat them with tenderness? Do we not, treat them as though they are precious and sacred? Do you remember a time when your children were young, maybe newborns and, children, and you just loved them? You just loved them. You didn't love them for anything they did, because they weren't doing a heck of a lot. They were just being. And you just enjoyed being in their presence. You see, parents, it's to have integrity in relationship here is to understand that you've been given the privilege. That privilege has been bestowed upon you to raise up, to care for the most sacred and precious thing in the entire universe. a human life in the form of a child, your child. And so when we stand in the presence of that truth, one of the things that we should immediately feel is humility. You, out of all people, have been chosen to receive an incredible gift, the most precious and sacred gift there can be. And you've been chosen. And you get to care for this thing and bring it up. I'll just say here, there's a piece of writing that we study constantly as one of the cornerstones of our parent leadership group, which is something written by an author named Khalil Gibran, and it's called On Children. So I may put up that link in the comments below, but if somehow I forget that, please remember it. Khalil Gibran, On Children. If you just Google that, you'll get to it. It's really powerful. It's really a great position for parents to take with their teens, with their children. So again, back to this foundation of integrity. So integrity means keeping our own sacred vow and promise to love and respect. And to understand that we've been given charge of something precious and sacred. And we know that to be true because when our kids are little, we just stand in their presence and we're in awe. I remember when my son was born, I was in awe. I didn't even have words for the tremendous gratitude for just who he was and what he was, just what he was for me and the gift that I had received in him. What a privilege. And so that understanding, that experience for us parents is something that we really need to hang on to. And unfortunately, it's an experience that so many parents seem to put on the back shelf when they're communicating with their teens or even their spouses or other loved ones. It just ends up on the back burner. But this becomes the entire foundation of healthy communication. So I stress here, parents, it's your responsibility. It's always the adult's responsibility to ensure integrity, to ensure personal integrity. To make sure that you're one with, whole, undivided from the truth of who you really are, which is to love and respect. To look again, to show consideration, to see reality. Reality is, again, that you've been given something, given something precious and sacred to care for. And that's a privilege. Let's be real. Most of us parents are human, and we've made tons of mistakes and made tons of poor decisions. And, and who are we to really be given this tremendous gift and opportunity and privilege? That's where the humility comes from. We're going, wow, look at this gift. So do your work to make sure that you have integrity with that experience and with those understandings and with your code of honor and with your sacred vow. And it would be great, if you want some help with this, come to the parent leadership group or email me, message me, what have you, and I will email you with the forms that we use to construct the code of honor and the sacred vow, and you can have that for free. Or I'll be happy to come if you're in Washington State or British Columbia, happy to come and visit if at all possible and do a workshop presentation for you, your team, your clients, what have you. But this is where it starts, and this is really a place that's overlooked. I've I've read many different things, and have run life skills groups that focus on communication and things of that nature. And most of it is the nuts and bolts of I statements and paraphrasing and perception checking and all this kind of stuff. To me, that all comes later, because this is the piece right here that we need to get to. This is the relational piece. This is what makes it work. When you walk into that room and you want to have this conversation with your son or daughter, and they see that glow on your face, that you're just so happy to be there and that you're just enjoying their presence. See, because at the very root of who we are, we want to be enjoyed. We want to be enjoyed, and we want to be a source of joy for other people. Little kids want to bring joy to their parents. And when a parent is mindful and attuned and present, you're present to the privilege of having been given charge of something that's sacred and precious. And how can you not feel humble and gratitude and appreciation for just being in the presence of this child? Imagine being able to carry that with you as you move through those developmental years. When we enjoy our children, one could say in attachment theory that is just absolutely necessary for them to feel good about themselves, their own self-esteem and self-worth. So let me move on here a little bit. So we got that first piece. I was going to say there's two pieces to this. That's the first piece. I'm going to do probably a part 2 and maybe even a part 3. And it looks like I moved ahead a little bit here in my notes, which is a good thing. Yeah, again, just take note that your capacity to love and to be true to your love that you had for your children was really strong when they were young, and that, unfortunately, like I said, can go on the back burner. I remember doing a session with a father and a son many years ago, and the father was saying to me that he and his son were constantly in conflict, that the only time that they were able to have decent communication was when they shared a common interest. But even when they started to share a common interest, that would soon break down into some sort of contentious debate, and any connection they had would fall apart. And I said, and I spoke to the son, who said, I don't feel loved. I don't feel seen. I don't feel cared for. My dad and I, we just fight all the time. We hardly even talk anymore. And when I was talking to the dad, I said, do you remember when your son was a baby, when he was a little guy? Do you remember how he didn't have to do anything? You guys didn't have anything in common, but you just loved him. You just loved being in his presence. I said, what happened to that? How come everything now is performance-based? You have to have something in common, really, in order to enjoy your son? You can't just sit with him. He can't just sit with you. You can't just enjoy who he is. What happened? And of course, the father went on to tell me that, he had a father who was very similar. A father who wasn't able to experience that joy, and everything became performance-based. And again, this is in another video. I talk about the importance of parents knowing their own family of origin patterns and how they were raised and how it affects their parenting capacity. In this situation, with his father and the son, it's almost like this son was calling his father out. He knew that his father had more love in him, but his father, had blocked that. And that's the way I'll suggest that at this point. So picking up on that in terms of setting up kind of the the container, the landscape, a healthy landscape for communication. It has everything to do with love. How do we know when we're loved? How do you know when you're loved? Because we know we know when we're truly loved because the person who loves us is willing to give everything, right? They're willing to give us their all, their time, their energy, their thoughts. We also know that we love something because we're willing to do that. As I was saying before, anytime we love something, we're willing to give ourselves to it. We're willing to give our time, our energy, our thoughts. Anything we truly love, we think a lot about. We dedicate ourselves to that thing. Those things naturally flow from when we're loving. So, so parents, again, it's your responsibility to bring to this communication a loving way of being. It's about being, and it's about being true to yourself. So bringing that into the conversation. So if you are going to have communication with your son or daughter and you truly love them, then that means that you're willing to dedicate yourself to them, to be willing to give your all. Now, most parents will say that, up front, I'll be willing to die for my son or daughter. Yeah, I guess that seems to be the primary show of affection, if you will, but sometimes that can be a hiding place too, because from day to day in your communication, are you bringing that loving presence? Probably not. So again, some things to be aware of. So when we love and we love in communication, uh, here's a couple things we bring to the conversation. One, humility. Remember, from the very beginning, you're talking with this teen, with this child, is a privilege. You're spending time with them is a privilege. It always was. It was that way in the beginning. It's that way now. No matter what you're talking about, it's up to you as the adult to remember that this person is sacred and precious, that you've been given charge of something incredibly precious. And in doing so, that creates humility. Bring the humility into the conversation. Don't be full of yourself. Be humble. Okay? Bring curiosity. I like this one because whatever we truly love, we're curious about. I mean, think about it. If you buy a new car or buy any car, what's the first thing you do? You go through it and you explore it and you read all the manuals and you're just curious about it. Most of us, when we even start to think about purchasing something like a car or a home or something like that, we're doing research. We're super curious about it. We want to know everything about it. This is especially important to bring into communication once puberty hits, because the task for parents at this point is to facilitate individuation, becoming their own person. So individuation doesn't happen through lectures, through advice giving, or any of that. All that technique, strategy, whatever is gone. Parents, where you're going to get your mileage now, if you will, where you're going to get bigger bang for your buck, is in curiosity. Explore them. Okay? Again, dedicate yourself. Proactively set aside time and eliminate all distractions. This is incredibly important. I'm gonna attach some links to some interesting articles and helpful articles regarding a father's involvement and the impact on daughters and self-esteem and self-worth. But every child needs to know that their parent is dedicated, setting aside time, giving it energy. They talk about how important it is for fathers to take their little girls and daughters on little dates. Just spend time with them specifically, and same with mothers and sons and fathers and sons, and it's not about doing everything for them. That's what we've talked about in prior videos. It's not about being a micromanager, a hovering parent, an overcompensating parent. That's not it. That's crippling. It's about, one might say, that quality time. It's not about the quantity, it's the quality. It's what I'm bringing to it. The fact that I'm willing to dedicate, that I'm willing to set aside, that I'm willing to be thoughtful, that I'm willing to give everything is a demonstration of who I'm being. It's a reflection of the truth of who I really am for this person. It's a reflection of my understanding that I've been given charge of something precious and sacred. So when this child feels that, it's nourishing at the most deepest levels. It's not a matter of time that I spend with them. It's a matter of the depth of my presence and who I'm being. Creating safety. Be considerate, be patient, and be tender. When you invite your youth into a conversation. Be courteous. Can I get you a cup of tea? Does this work for your schedule right now? I really enjoy an opportunity. Because remember, it's a privilege, and I want to stay connected to the joy. So I would really enjoy an opportunity. What works for you this week? What's your schedule look like? I'm being tender. I'm being sensitive. That's a sign of respect, isn't it? To look again, to be thoughtful. I want to say be appreciative. I spent time with a young person, like I do often, and at the end of a conversation with them, no matter how challenging, whether they say little or whether they say a lot, doesn't matter. I say, I really appreciate the time we spent together. And I acknowledge their strengths. Now, when I say acknowledge strengths, I'm really saying I'm seeing the truth of who you really are. I'm acknowledging your virtues. So I might say, I really appreciate our time together, and and your bravery or your courage or your sensitivity, your openness, your willingness, your maturity. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed our conversation today. And then I would say, what do you think about meeting again? I would like to meet again. And most oftentimes they will say yes. All right, so parents, absolutely. Appreciation is part of that, a big part of that, and acknowledging their virtues. So I'm going to wrap this up here in just a moment. Couple last things. Parents, be helpful by removing your own agenda. Remember, your focus in communication is relationship, and you obtain relationship through having integrity with the truth of who you really are. It's really easy to have a relationship with somebody who's humble, with somebody who's receptive, with somebody who's creating safety, with somebody who's appreciative. Well, that just creates a safe space. That's a person who has removed their own agenda. They're no longer thinking about themselves, because that's not what their sacred vow is about. They're being present for others. Another huge one. Perception is always reality. I'll say more on this later. But remember, parents, you don't need to defend yourself. Your job is to listen. And although what might be coming out of the mouth of your child or teen is not what you think is reality, to them it is reality. Your job is not to be the judge of what reality is. Your job is to be tender and sensitive and receptive. Create a safe space for people to talk. So when they share an experience with you, when they have maybe a grievance with you, it doesn't matter. That's their reality. Hear it out. So many parents begin to become defensive right at that point and want to start launching a campaign to prove their own innocence. And that just destroys the conversation. And that shows an immaturity on the parent's part and by revealing an insecurity. And that's something that parent needs to work on. So, perception is reality. I'm going to leave that there. And in the part 2, I'm going to review some of this stuff, but then I'm going to go on to give more of the nuts and bolts on communication. So I hope that's been helpful. So just like I said, thank you for subscribing and for the views. Let me know if there's any other topics that you'd like me to address, and I'd be happy to do that. Have a good day.